Images like these every day in the Gulf of Mexico. And our first guest today is California Congressman John Garamendi, who is calling for an end to platform drilling. Before we get to your call, Congressman, what is the gap between what is potentially knowable, the actual information we could obtain if we had no basically resistance from BP or anybody else, and the information we actually have? And why are we not seeing criminal action at this point against BP or anybody else that would deprive the American people of the full data set?
Well, with regard to the criminal action, right now the Attorney General is well underway in exploring all of the details to determine if, in fact, there is appropriate criminal action. Certainly BP is in deep financial trouble. That is obvious, and they must be held fully accountable. That is, they must pay every single cent of what it costs to clean this thing up, what it costs to shut the blowout down, and the environmental damage after that. If that takes this company out, well, that's going to be too bad. But what's too bad is what's taken place.
As a representative, though, of the American people and our democracy, what is your sense of the actual information that you and your colleagues in our government are being given compared to what may be possible if there was better information flow or less foot dragging on the part of any variety of agencies, from the MMS to British Petroleum themselves?
Well, certainly BP from the very outset was wrong. They were wrong about the blowout. They were wrong about the amount of oil that was leaking. And they've been wrong to hide the videos for so very long. As that information is now becoming more and more available, we will get to the bottom of this. It may not, it certainly wasn't there early on. More is becoming available. More should be available. In fact, everything should be available. Totally transparent on all of the information, including the logs, all of the records, all of that should be out in the public domain for many reasons. Principally because the more information that's out there, the better opportunity there are for scientists, engineers around the world to use that information to try to help us find a solution to stop the oil from flowing out of this blowout and the cleanup that goes with it.
To the extent to which there is any withholding of information or denial of access to resources by BP because they believe it's in the interest of their own self-preservation, isn't that inherently some form of criminal act, because their refusal to give us the real information is altering the nature of the American response and in the process further poisoning and toxifying the entire Gulf and Gulf Coast economy?
Well, you've made a very good point. I can assure you the Attorney General and his troops are looking at precisely that issue and others. It may very well be that is a criminal act, in which case the Attorney General, I am certain, is going to take action and bring charges. That's what's underway right now. That's a process that requires the Attorney General and his people to look at it. And you raised, I think, the excellent point that they're looking at.
Yeah. Two other things I want to talk about. The drilling very briefly. There's a tragic irony in this that I'm sure you're familiar with, which is that because of the oil spill, the jobs that are not drilling for oil or not energy related in the Gulf states, like tourism, like fishing, have now been taken away from those people. So in fact, they're more dependent now on drilling jobs in that economy than they have ever been. Is it, while politically understandable and desirable to maybe be anti-drilling right now, does that actually make it worse for the individuals who are there, because now the one job that they could still get is now no longer legal?
No, I can assure you that the waiters at the hotel and the people that are lifeguard on the beaches, they are not going to be out on the drilling platform, even if those jobs were available. Those are completely different kinds of jobs. But what we do see from this is the extraordinary risk and the damage to the economy that's caused by offshore drilling. This is not the first accident that's happened. This is repeated over and over again, and that's why, at least on the West Coast, I proposed a law called the West Coast Ocean Protection Act. No more leases off the West Coast of America. Oregon, Washington, and California. That's it, folks. We're not going to depend upon that source of oil. We need to move to renewables of all kinds. We need to move away from oil. As long as we continue to drill, we will continue to do it the easy and the extraordinarily dangerous way that we have for these many years. Enough already. Stop. Go to a different direction. Go to renewables. Go to conservation, and no longer depend upon this, particularly as we move to deeper and deeper waters. And that's why we ought to also immediately pass a law removing the $74 million liability cap. That should be unlimited liability. That would force these companies to take a second look, to be super careful, and where it's very, very risky, don't do it, because they're risking everything. Right now, BP has opened the door for every one of these companies to face unlimited liability. That law has to pass Congress, be signed by the president now.
Last point that I will make, and I'll let you go. The talk about BP's dire financial straits at the same time that our government, as you just represented, seeks to hold them to account for their liabilities. British Petroleum is planning on paying out $10.5 billion, that's a B, in dividends to their shareholders. Do you think it's appropriate that BP, in the face of potentially unlimited liability in the Gulf of Mexico, continues to pay out its dividends to its stockholders as a way basically to extract the cash out of the company, so that by the time the Gulf fishermen come to them, the money's all been paid out?
Absolutely wrong. Absolutely cannot and should not happen. I'll tell you what I did when I was the insurance commissioner in California when faced with a similar situation in an insurance company. I phoned up the executive and said, you take that money, I'm going to have you hung by your heels. You cannot take that money out of the company. You are actually taking it away, in that case, from the policyholders. They should not be allowed to do this. There ought to be an injunction placed immediately in federal court stopping that kind of action, because indeed that money may very well be there for the people on the Gulf Coast, for the cleanup, for all of the things that need to be done. An injunction is necessary if, in fact, they intend to do that. And don't wait till they do it. Do it before they put that injunction in place, before
couldn't agree more.
They even begin to.
And any efforts that you could make on our behalf to prevent them from continuing to pay money while they obviously have created a massive liability are much appreciated, Congressman. Thank you so much.
You should continue doing what you're doing, and that is raising the point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Congressman. Speaking of